Good evening to viewers. We thank you so much for joining us in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on Equinox Television. 3 children die in Mimbomane locality in the central region of the country after a fire incident consumed the entire content of a building in that part of Cameroon. And also in this newscast, we talk about the just appointed 9-man delegation of the National Communication Council, where media practitioners here in the economic capital Douala say that the 9-man delegation should take the interest of all journalists in the country at heart and also ensure that media outlets in Cameroon respect the norms governing the profession. These headlines and more in this newscast. Good evening to you once again, viewers. We thank you so much for joining us in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on ETV. We begin right away here in the economic capital, Douala, where workers of Global Security, a company here in the city of Douala, to the grounded tools, decrying the poor working conditions, and they even paralyzed circulation, saying that it is not the first time that the management of the company has failed to pay their salary arrears. Details of the report with senior reporter Chris Toby.
Tension rapidly rose this morning around Bonapriso, where employees of a security company, Global Security, mounted barricades blocking the road as they cried that a hungry man is an angry man and that an empty stomach has no ears. To them, it was not the first time that management of Global Security had failed to respect promised date for salary arrears payment, while their different family problems increased day by day and at breakneck speed. 2 months without salary, without any hope of advancement, lack of acceptable working conditions, those are some of the worries that these angry vigiles could manage to tell the press. And for us, traffic stood still around Bonapriso until the arrival of men in uniform. But as they leave the public road, solutions are still to be proposed as even the head office remained closed. Even the general manager this reporter managed to talk to on phone made it crystal clear that his priority was his statement at the local gendarmerie post and not the press. But for how long?
Now, some ex-workers of the defunct National Railway Company, the Regifecam, today staged a protest demonstration on the railway crossing, and the ex-workers are calling on the government to pay their retirement benefit, which has remained pending since the year 1959. Senior reporter Chris Toby once again tells us more in the following report.
It is with this coffin that ex-workers of the former National Railway Company, the Regifecam, this morning blocked the railway around Kilometre 5. The different placards the angry workers carried in hand with all the different messages on them clearly show the reasons for their action taking over the railway, thus paralyzing traffic. These ex-employees want their retirement allowances paid since 1959, and this is the situation that forced them back to the streets, that of suffering and even sickness. But this public manifestation was short-lived as they got quickly dispersed at the arrival of law enforcement officers.
Now we continue here in the economic capital Douala to talk about the just appointed 9-man delegation to pilot the activities of the National Communication Forum, where media practitioners here in the economic capital Douala have said they expect the newly appointed members into the National Communication Council to regulate the sector and also sanction media outlets and journalists who violate the norms of the profession. They were speaking in the wake of the recent decree or presidential decree that was passed by Head of State Paul Biya on February 22, 2013. Rani Belsatowara in the following report now presents the new members as well as their various duties. Her report.
Suzanne Kalalobe is among those appointed into the National Communication Council by the President of the Republic. She has been serving as a journalist and an editorialist in the Cameroonian media landscape for the past 22 years. An audiovisual technician and daughter of a late veteran journalist, the 60-year-old TV presenter said she awaited her appointment. She said in her capacity as part of the national regulatory body, she will do all to ensure that journalists are respected more and be able to retire home with a better pay package. Other new experienced and acclaimed journalists were also appointed following the February 22 presidential decree. Peter Esoka, Jean-Toby Hond, Nadine Machiko, Alpha Abdulhaman, Jean-Claude Otto, Charlene Dicha, Christophe Bobiokono, and Jean-Bruno Tanye for a 3-year term renewable once. The president of the National Communication Council, His Lordship Befe Ateba, was the lone member until the recent appointment, since the mandate of the others expired since last year. The new members in their duties would be expected to regulate and sanction wayward media outlets and personnel that go against the norms of the journalism profession.
Rani Belsatu Warad presenting the duties as well as the rules of all the just appointed members of the National Communication Forum now. While the search for the alleged serial killers in Mimboman, we are in the central region of the country, continues. Families of the deceased, they are still finding it difficult coping with the situation. They were speaking during a joint prayer session in memory of those whose lives were lost under doubtful circumstances. Our Yaoundé-based correspondent Roland Akon has the details of the report.
This woman lost her daughter in the Mimboman ritual crime saga. With tears rolling down her cheeks, she says her daughter left home December 23 and she only saw her mortal remains in an advanced state of decomposition. She prays this should not happen to any mother or family in Cameroon. This other woman lost a child in the Mimboman ritual crime saga. In an inconsolable state, she recounts the sad story. This grief-stricken visit by the Minister of Women Empowerment and Family, plus local authorities of the Yaoundé 4 subdivision, aims to ease the pains and extend government's comfort to all families which lost children during the Mimboman ritual crime saga.
And in the wake of the prayer session that took place in the capital city, Yaoundé, 3 children reportedly died in a house ravaged by flames. That was last night, still in the Mimboman neighborhood in the capital city, Yaoundé. The children aged 5 years, 1 or 2.5 years, and also 3 months are said to have fallen asleep when a lit candle near the bed caught fire, and firefighters could not get to the scene on time, and some neighbors managed to put out the flames when it had already registered enormous material damage, and we shall surely be coming back to that in a subsequent newscast. Now, another incident which took place, but here in the economic capital, Douala, is one member of the Azengu-led delegation of the Social Democratic Front that died under unclear circumstances. And Cameroon Paul, an elected member of the NEC, was rushed to the hospital midday today, where he died of a malaise, and the commission was into its second working day, that was today. We also shall be telling you more on that in a subsequent newscast. Now, experts in stenotyping are few in Cameroon, and it is even rare to see men practicing the profession. And let us take a look at a man in the capital city, Yaoundé, who says that the profession is not only a vocation but also a passion. Roland Akon tells us more in the following report.
Stenotyping, as this is called, is a profession which is not well known in Cameroon.
Stenotyping is a profession which is based on the use of a machine called a stenotype, having 21 keys. It's not just like an ordinary keyboard, but this one we have our own keyboard made up of 21 keys with some initial signs. Some are made up of alphabetical letters, while others are just initials which are interpreted.
Stenotypists are verbatim reporters, different from ordinary secretaries, not only by their machines, but also by their word verbatim report.
So as verbatim reporters, you have to give word to word. You are not supposed to add, you are not supposed to subtract any discussion in which you are asked to cover. So irrespective of what your documents that you have serve as proof in the nearest and in the furthest future.
They can work wherever verbatim reporters are needed. Their services are mostly visible at the National Assembly, which has a training center for stenotypists.
Our services are well needed in companies because, like I said, verbatim reporters, when the board of directors sits, all the discussion, a secretary can never take what we are taking, no matter how fast you are. Even you are using the keyboard, a laptop, computer, whatsoever, you can never take what we can cover. So there is a difference between our profession and ordinary secretaries.
The period of training is 3 years, and their recruitment is based on their speed of typing.
During your first year, you're supposed to cover a minimum speed of 180 words per minute. During your second year, you're supposed to cover a minimum of 140 words a minute. And your third year, which is a professional year, you're supposed to cover a minimum of at least 180 words too. And the least person to sit for this concours, for, let me say, the last batch is advanced level, but an advanced level plus, so a proof of at least some few years of degree studies to show that at least you can give good report.
Stenotyping is not a job for women only. Our guide is one in the midst of many women undergoing training at the National Assembly School of Stenotypists.
Stenotyping, of course, is not only a job for women, and also now we talk religion, where Head of State Paul Biya has saluted the gesture of Pope Benedict XVI, who announced his resignation a few days ago. And in a letter to the Supreme Pontiff, the Head of State said his stand on morality would forever remain fresh in the minds of Cameroonians, though Mr. Biya expressed surprise at the Pope's resignations, and he said he understands Pope Benedict's decision, however. We shall be telling you more on that as well in our subsequent newscast. Now let's talk sports football. They just ended day 3 of the Elite One games that took place over the weekend in Cameroon, where we have the fixtures or the official classification table of the various encounters or the various teams taking part in the competition. Unisport is having 1 point, Panther of day 2 points, Vofovu 0, DAC 2 points, Union Sportif of Douala to 1 point, Canon 1 point, Renaissance of Ngumu 2 points, Young Sport Academy 0 point, Coton Sportif of Yaoundé 2 points, and Astro 1 point, Tekase 1 point, and Sablo of Bache 2 points, and Young Jalakon Sport Academy 1 point, and New Stars of Douala 2 points. We surely shall be telling you or giving you the official classification table of the Elite 2 games in a subsequent newscast. Now that does it for this first segment of the news, but Talking Point is up next. Good evening to you viewers. Once again, we thank you so much for joining us tonight on Talking Point. We are going to be talking about the just appointed members of the National Communication Council. And tonight we have a veteran journalist, James Fontem. Good evening, sir, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening.
Of course, I will begin by asking your appraisal of the February 22nd decree appointing 9 persons to head the delegation or to head the National Communication Council in Cameroon. What is your appraisal?
Well, it's a good one. It's just an indication that Cameroon is making progress, though it took so long for the appointments to come. And this is an opportunity to congratulate those who were selected from the many who could have also sat in that board. And we only think that those who have been chosen should know that it's a challenge, and they have to do the work with a lot of integrity.
So looking at the way or the number of persons, we see 6 journalists out of the 9 appointed members. So do you see any major innovation in this appointment?
I would want to say that the board that was put in place is supposed to be considered a monitoring organization. And one of the lapses which I already recognize is the fact that there are no small people in the board. And when I talk of small people, I mean young journalists or young persons. And a board like this one should also carry representatives of the listeners or the readers of the newspapers that you want to monitor. Or else the board is going to act like a top-down instrument, unlike a board like that should be one that could be able to investigate at all levels, right down to where the things they want to correct happened.
So do you see all these domains represented in the appointment that you are mentioning?
Well, they are not. That is why I'm saying that here. And the only satisfaction I would want to make known is the fact that most of those who are in the board are retired persons, those who worked in the profession successfully. Others even had problems while working in the profession. So they would use that experience and some of the hitches that happened during their time of performance of the career to correct some of the issues that are on now. We have a multiplicity of media, and there are media organizations that are not yet regulated. That is, they are just working without no licenses, and the board now has to sit down to make sure that the statutes and internal regulations of the board are made clear, so that by the time you're carrying out a sanction, you should know why you're carrying out a sanction, and there should be limits, because you can't just sit down and say a media house should be sanctioned without giving the parameter within which the fault was judged.
Now, it has always been the cry of journalists to be highly represented in the National Communication Council, and we see 6 of them out of 9, and it seems to still be a problem.
I don't think the National Commission should be looked as a journalist affair. The media houses belong to the people who listen to them or read the work that comes out. And I think those people who listen to radio, watch TV, or read the newspapers are those who can judge those media organs well. It could just have had 3 or 4 journalists in the group, but they needed to bring in more other target groups in the communities. Like I find in this commission that has been said, just only one lady, and the lady cannot defend the rights of the women globally, because if she is alone there, she would be arguing based on where she stands, and many of the women may not be in the position where she stands. So I believe that, as I was saying, this board needed to have brought in young persons too, and the small people. And you know, the small people are a greater number. If you listen to all the international channels, the news and programs which are produced based on the problems that the small people in the community have. So if you go and build a board where every person is a big person, who talks for the small people there? So we should be able to produce programs that cater for all the target groups in our communities.
So now you seem to have a mastery of those that have been elected into the National Communication Forum, and taking a look at how the core used to operate in the past before the recent appointment. Do you think there is going to be any major change?
There would be a change, obviously. There would be a change, because most of those who are in have been able to manage companies, and these companies have had media structures, and I hope the experiences in managing the companies and the media structures which they have belonged to would help in drawing the line on what is right and what is wrong. I know this appointment is coming just at a time everybody is talking about elections, and that would be one of the things that has motivated the head of state to appoint this board, because the elections that are coming up are going to come up with a great number of innovations, especially media coverage, and you need a group of people who are respected in the community, who listen to what is happening around the press and in the government, because media activities are a two-way deal. Where the media is performing very well, it doesn't hide. Where it's going wrong, it doesn't hide. And I think these people should be able to not only punish, but to congratulate those that are doing well, because there are quite a good number of independent channels in Cameroon today that are doing things that the national government channel will not do. And it's true that the government channels will not do certain things because of the censorship that is always there at the public level. And the people who have been appointed, I would congratulate them and ask them to work as independently as possible and to look at things from a clear point of view. They should not take sides. And they should also understand that Cameroon is still a developing country, and some of the expectations they would want the media in Cameroon to perform like the international channels, it would not happen for now. The competition is tough, and it would be good to take time to look at the better side of it instead of looking at the wrong side of it.
Now, you raised a couple of expectations, and also media practitioners here in the economic capital, Douala, have also raised theirs. They say that they are hoping that the just appointed members of the National Communication Council is going to ensure that their working conditions are better or improved upon. How do you look at the condition of journalists today in the country?
I think this is just one of the things that this commission should discuss, because in other countries, newspapers, independent television channels, and independent radio and community radios, they have some sort of support from the public sector. And some of the rules and regulations in some countries have been made in such a way that they are quite a minimum that these media organs should have for publicity. You see, publicity in Cameroon is still very low, cheap, and the journalists are not well paid because the resources going into the media house are not as high as they are expected. And I would want to say Cameroon should copy what is going on in countries where the media has worked very well with the government. The government uses the independent media and gives them subvention to continue to perform well, because where the people working in a media house are not feeling fine in their work, that is, they do not have material financial satisfaction, you cannot expect so much from them. If they're having good financial remuneration, you would hardly see a journalist going off the rail. And most of those that go off the rail today are persons who are being bought, and very easily, because they knew they would do the job very badly, and the image of one person will be damaged. And the time you want to start repairing, you never repair an image that has been damaged, because not every person who got the destruction generally gets the correction that has been done. And I think this is a time for the Commission to sit down and do concrete proposals that a media house that has been put in state and authorized by the government should have all the necessary guarantees for them to do the work, and that those who are recruited in the media houses should be trained, and those who are trained that have worked for quite a number of years in the media house should be recycled, because the media is an innovative profession, and the instruments and communication tools are changing. Everything is going digital now. You would imagine that when CRTV started, they had very rustic equipment, and today the equipment that is being used on the field is light equipment, and I think that should be put into consideration, because it would cost money, and this money should come from somewhere.
There you are underscoring the need for the government to work hand in hand with the private media in Cameroon. Do you think that could be possible soonest? Do you think that could be possible in Cameroon?
It's possible. Today? It's just a matter of will. The people who are working in government stay with you in the same residential areas. I don't see why we should think that if there is breaking news in a residential area, it would not affect the person who is in the commission, and that if it touches on the small person in that residential area, that the person who is in the commission will not feel it. I think we should be able to look at things from a global face, and the development strategy in Cameroon should be one that should be open without barriers, and that we should try to put every person in the same basket and say, if this wagon comes down, we are losing every person that we have. And if you think about that, you will try to avoid so many mistakes in the work we do.
Thanks indeed, Mr. James Fontaine, for joining us tonight on Talking Point.
It's me. Thank you for inviting me to give this contribution.
And to you viewers, we thank you so much for watching. We have come to the end of this edition of the Primetime Newscast on ETV. Have a wonderful stay in the company of our programs. Good evening to you all.